All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's January 27th, 2021. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your teams and then showing them the ropes. If that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel, as well as follow up with an email so you can share that with your team. So with that said, let's kick it off. I got some good announcements for this week. So one is a very alpha provider. Matt Calhoun on the team's been working on. It is a provider by us that provides some utility functions, things that we have wanted ourselves. The pull request for this hasn't been yet merged, but I always like to get some early feedback from folks. We'll probably merge this today or tomorrow or so. And this initial implementation of our Terraform utils provider is providing the ability for deep merging in Terraform. For those of you who attended our call last week, you probably heard the segment about how we're using YAML for configuration and why we like YAML for configuration. Basically, you can have remote YAML files, you can deep merge YAML files, you can select which YAML files you want to load, and you can't do any of that with TFR files. So this approach is integral to what we're doing, and this module is providing a much needed ability in Terraform as a stopgap measure, which is to do deep merging of values. So this provider, you can invoke it quite easily. It's a data source. Let's see here, that's developing it. And yeah, the usage here, I guess we didn't add the usage example to the README yet.
It's still to do. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, it's still to do. We got the example here though. Let's see here, provider, data sources.
Data sources, and then you can pick either JSON or YAML.
Yeah. So using the Cloud Posse utils provider, you can load two JSON files, for example, or load two YAML files. We support both. And then call the data source for doing a deep merge. So that allows you to have complex maps and lists, and those get merged together and output this way. We've been doing this using native Terraform, and we kind of ran into a problem where our plans were taking like 3 minutes to run, even though we were just doing basic deep merging, and that's because it was just too inefficient. So we were doing it this way. The other challenge we ran into is just Terraform's the ability to work with complex objects in the providers was difficult. And since the input source for us is YAML or JSON, we decided to stick with using YAML or JSON, decoding it in this data source, and then doing the deep merge as the workaround for that. So we don't have to worry about those issues. Matt, anything you'd like to add to that?
Nope, I think that pretty well sums it up. And other than we probably have some plans to add some additional functionality to this provider as well to work around a bunch of other use cases that we've come up with that are not easy to do in Terraform.
Yeah. Ideas we have, these are not eminent, and we might reverse course on it, but like in the past, we've wanted to read an environment variable from Terraform. We couldn't do that. We could add that just here to this data provider. If we wanted to do any more advanced manipulations to data structures and things like that, we could add it here. If we wanted to add KPIs for customers so that customers could track their releases in Terraform, we could add like something to this that helps them send a ping to Datadog or something that this resource was changed or updated. I don't know. We haven't thought it through all those ones. The eminent need we have right now is deep merging. Any questions on that? All right. And that's available in the registry already. So you go to the Terraform registry, you can find that util provider available and published. It's going to take me longer to find it here, so I'm just going to skip that.
Eric, repository's main branch looks empty.
Yeah, so one of the nifty little things you can do is you can cut a release against any branch. So these are all the releases you see for this provider right now are pre-releases as well as alphas. So not saying ship this to production, but this will be production ready pretty shortly as we let it burn in over the next.
Too late. I already shipped it to production.
Ah, damn it! Again.
The alpha version.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hey Matt, where's that pre-release flag? No, so these other ones were pre-releases. The last one we cut was not a pre-release, so it is ready for production. Joking. Okay, so next.
I'll change the flag.
Next thing was something that is one of these reactions was like, yeah, oh, never mind. So GitHub finally released access controls for GitHub pages, which is kind of nice if you just wanted a simple way to have static documentation for your company. So you can now publish your static site to GitHub as you have been, as you could do to S3 or any other number of sites. The difference is you want it protected. And it'd be really nice if you could just say, hey, this GitHub team can access this documentation on this GitHub page. But yeah, it's only for enterprise organizations. And GitHub Enterprise is really expensive. So I give it to GitHub. I'm really happy they're investing in the platform. They've added some cool functionality like environments and now protected pages. But the problem with environments is it's also only available for enterprises, well, and open source, and this protected pages. Has anybody already kicked the tires on the access controls for GitHub pages? All right, next. The other one, I'm sure if you use Elasticsearch and been following Hacker News like everyone else on the call, is that there's a bit of a contentious fallout between Elastic and Amazon. Elastic kind of reneged on a promise that they were always going to stay open source, and they have changed their license now to a proprietary open source-ish license that basically says, hey, you can't build a service using Elastic and resell it without a licensing agreement from Elastic. So as Amazon came out with this announcement, it was yeah, it's an interesting announcement to read. They don't hold back on they're pretty critical of how things ensued. Everyone seems upset. I don't know how I feel about it. Obviously, I want open source companies to make money. We are an open source company. I think Amazon could have done things earlier on to avoid these circumstances from happening. Obviously, it happened with Mongo, and DocumentDB is now pinned at an old version of the Mongo API, and they can't update it. Now Elastic has been forked. I wonder what this means for the ecosystem.
Also, Kafka is the
Kafka. Kafka's done this now too.
Yeah, they have the same problem with that. So, I mean, if you look at it, and it's pretty much like the only way that those companies make money is by the support agreements and running their managed services on top of them. And then Amazon comes along and basically says, well, we're just going to do this, and everyone's stuff is already in Amazon, so why would they ever use you? And then now those companies are kind of out of luck. So I see both sides of it, but
Yeah.
it's hard to feel sorry for Amazon's position on any of these things. But pay those companies some money and license it and run it for
Yeah.
they've got a lot of free cash.
I generally I kind of agree with I agree with the gist of it, the sentiment of it. I wish that this could be worked out without being litigious about it, or breaking it down to what the license says or not. Being a good citizen in the open source community this way, I mean, I believe Google's gotten good.
Eric, also there is some kind of controversy between Docker and Amazon, right? I don't know if this is discussed here before.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the Docker offered Amazon to share the burden because a huge amount of downloads coming from AWS, and
Yeah.
Docker's servers are on AWS, and Docker
Yeah.
suggested that AWS made some discount, maybe something like Amazon refused it, and Docker now has
Oh.
severe limitations on downloads, and if you want to make code builds, it doesn't work because of this situation. And I carried out all public images to ECR because of that.
Well, the other interesting part, just sorry to that, is that the then follow up Amazon's response was, well, now Docker is charging people money to limit them and do all these things. So then they created a free public ECR mirror of Docker Hub, basically. So now you can get everything from there if you use their mirror.
AWS did that, yeah.
What? So I saw the announcement of the public ECR. I didn't see
it's not
the
active
emphasis.
right now. It's a plan.
The mirroring is not available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they started some of them, and they announced pricing and all of that kind of stuff at this point. For if you're using it inside Amazon VPCs versus outside Amazon VPCs and all of these other things. So I think you can basically use it as like a pull through cache for Docker Hub is the idea behind it.
Actually,
I think it's a shame for Amazon. I mean, why do they refuse that? I mean, make some discount, right?
Yeah, I guess they didn't want to set a precedent on that. What was somebody else was going to jump in there for a second?
Yeah, that's me. I think I faced this last week. So we were building from code build, Docker image and push it. So we hit the limit. What we do is that we push the public repository into ECR and pull from there. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's the only way. It's the only way right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So related to what we're talking about, but not super on topic, I just posted a screenshot from the Rancher Slack. And what I found very interesting was Docker does not offer it as an official option, but Rancher, look at that first comment from Vincent there. Vincent's a Rancher employee. He basically said, we threw money at the problem and got Docker to just let anything under the Rancher group be not rate limited.
Huh. Okay. I guess that's what they wanted to do. And also just, public service announcement, Docker is not owned by Docker anymore. The Docker that we know and love changed hands and is owned by Mirantis now.
Mirantis, yeah.
With roots in professional services.
So I think this, because the Twitter thread that he posted there was like, hey, we want to give you money for this, but you won't let us. I have a feeling this is going to get fleshed out more and will be a service available to vendors such that this may not be as much of a problem going forward.
Makes me think of the arguments about on the internet. What do they call it? They want to tax, like Netflix and Google for consuming more. Net neutrality. This is Docker neutrality. All right. Was somebody else going to jump in there with some comment?
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, I think that, overall the term Docker is going to go slowly away, because, now we have different container runtimes, and we have containerd being the runtime that, other platforms are moving towards. Like Fargate is already on containerd, Kubernetes is moving towards containerd. So it's like Docker was the way we referred to containers before because it was what was popular.
Yeah.
But, a year from now, more people might be running on, and now I can't remember the other one, so that's kind of ironic to this point. But there's a couple other runtimes that are getting bigger.
Yeah.
Podman. Rocket's
Podman.
gone.
Yeah.
Rocket's not
Podman
a
is
thing
wrong.
anymore.
Yeah.
One thing
It's become the saran wrap of.
I'm not so sure, because regardless of what brand it is, what do you still call that box of facial tissue on your desk?
Exactly. Kleenex.
No, what
That's
I
a
was
good
wondering, one thing I'm kind of scared about is I'm seeing more Red Hat, kind of the looming, or IBM, the looming giant, because IBM is notorious in their background for vendor locking, and Red Hat's been kind of shooting that vendor locking horn lately. So what I understand with Red Hat, there's the whole CentOS controversy. And why I bring this up is because they're kind of inserting themselves with OpenShift and Builda and Podman tools into the Kubernetes, ecospace and Docker ecosystem rather. That's what I'm concerned about. And then also they had, besides the CentOS, besides that, you couldn't get security checks again with CVEs or whatever. I'm not sure the exact specifics of this, unless you had a Red Hat license. Whereas like Ubuntu is like free, so you can get the security list and find out which packages very easily have vulnerabilities and such. And also they got rid of Kubernetes as an RPM package and replaced it with OpenShift as the only Kubernetes package. So you're starting to see that kind of encroachment from a lot of free tools, but then lock you in it. And then everything now is like you look at a lot of open source tools and it's like OpenShift. I'm like, I don't want OpenShift. I just want Kubernetes, Docker. I don't want to get into some new tool space. I just want to work for everything.
This is inevitably going to happen as vendors are trying to carve out their differentiators and lock in. So I hate it. It happened with with OpenStack, of course. It's inevitably going to happen here with Kubernetes too. I don't know how. Is there a way to prevent this from happening as we build these shared platforms? Yeah.
Like more open source.
Yes, but the entire community would have to change, the way it supports open source contributors.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just not buying them enough beers, and they got to get money from their employer, and their employer has demands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly, the solution is container blockchain.
Yeah. Yeah, God forbid we start pushing containers into the blockchain.
I bet it's already happened somewhere.
I bet. Oh my God. All right. Last two things just on announcements. Yeah, if you're interested, there's no profit in for us. It's just if you want to show your own support, we do have swag.cloudposse.com with stickers and mugs and stuff like that. Feel free to check that out. And we also have our YouTube channel. If you want to catch up on past episodes of our office hours, check out the playlists here. Under playlists, we have playlists for the guest speakers we've had, individual smaller segments we've had from office hours, and then the full-length office hours segments. So check that out. All right, questions? Oh, sorry, what was that?
Last time you talked about the shop, I went and looked because I did want a sticker or whatever, and I don't want to poo-poo it because I like it, but like a mug was $11 and then shipping was $12. Like
that's crazy.
Is that going to get fixed at all, or?
Yeah, let me see if there's something wrong there. These are just based on percentages of. We use Shopify and I forget the other company. But yeah, it's stupid that stickers end up costing $4 plus, and when you can buy like 100 stickers for that. We'll see what we can do. I'm trying not to make it a loss leader for us, and this is just covering the overall costs of chaining this platform with that platform with that platform. But I agree with your sentiment there, Andy. Just so you know, we don't make any money on it. All right. Next talking point, first talking point rather, under talking points. Matt, we didn't get to your question last week. Matt, are you on the call?
Yeah, hey, what's up?
Awesome. We didn't cover this, right?
No,
Git
it's
flow.
kind of yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of a bigger question. I would be just interested to hear like if anyone has any Git flow kind of workflows within their Terraform repos. I've been I have a larger client of mine that we're using Git flow everywhere. So the client, a bunch of engineers on the client's team asked like, hey, why can't we do a develop branch for our Terraform repo and kind of segregate it so that we on merge to develop, we actually deploy immediately to dev and all this fun stuff. And I don't know, I feel very conflicted about it. So I would love to hear if anyone does this or has tried it and it failed, or how folks are managing larger Terraform mono repos with Git. I think that's an interesting discussion that I would like to hear about.
Cool. Andrew, I saw you raise your hand. You want to lead with this?
My team is doing it now. I don't love it. It hasn't blown up at us yet, but it is something that we're doing. In particular, what I particularly don't love is if something wrong happens and the Jenkins job fails or gets aborted, then you just lose your state. And that's really bad in Terraform. So it's not something that we've really fixed yet, but we are doing it. Exactly, we have our pipeline so that if it's a feature branch, it spins up. You have the ability to spin up a sandbox version of the entire IAC, and then we have another Jenkins job that you can destroy it all. Merges to develop, deploy to the dev environment, merges to master, deploy to test, and running tags deploys to prod, and it's working for us. But I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but we are using it.
Interesting.
Thanks, Dan.
And you were talking about Terraform state. You like losing Terraform state because do you keep state locally in the repo?
No, it's in S3. But the way Terraform works, if you sig kill Terraform, it does not push state.
Oh, okay. So if the Jenkins job dies, then it doesn't end up actually doing
right.
the actual.
Or you upgrade
okay.
Jenkins, and they were running jobs, right?
Yeah.
If you that's the easiest way to describe the problem. If you sig kill Terraform, it does not push the state up to S3.
And there are some bugs that will just kill Terraform so it doesn't clean up nicely, and it'll leave you in that state as well. Not many, but it happens.
So it's a little sketchy. Thankfully, it's only the development environment that sometimes gets blown away and we have to fix. But by the time it gets up into test and then prod, it's already been deployed several times and it's likely to be an easy deployment, but you never know. So which is why I don't love it.
And this is the whole thing that Terraform is a lot more like a database migration tool that's run outside of transactions. So this is why I would avoid those kinds of things. Michael Jenkins, did you have a separate question or were you going to add something to this?
No, I was going to comment on the whole Git flow thing, merging develop to master. I've tried it with the team. I decided not to go that route, mainly because, and I guess I would offer this as a caveat, is if you, at least in our experience, we were using the workspaces, and I would highly recommend that to have a workspace that matches the branch that you're working on, because then you won't have if you're using the same account, for example, to deploy your prod and develop or whatever the case is, you're less likely to have collisions in naming things. If you tie the name of whatever you're deploying to I forget what the meta variable is, but there's a way to capture the name of the workspace in your resources. Use that along with your deploys. So that way, that's kind of clean. But what we ended up doing was just having different folders for different environments and not necessarily worrying about branches and workspaces, because for local development, we found that people were less likely to switch to the workspace that they needed to be in when they're doing their manual development. So CI, yeah, you can totally control it, but when it comes to the local development, yeah, you might have problems that way.
Yeah, those are good points, Michael. Also, one point, so I think I like the tip of using the workspace variable as part of the resource name somehow, if you're not already using like Cloud Posse's no label module. But the other thing to note there is that that variable, I believe, is not available in Terraform Cloud, and it's only available in Terraform open source. So that's bit. I know Brian Tai, he was affected by that when he moved to Terraform Cloud.
Yeah.
I will mention that we do deploy to completely separate AWS accounts. We have a dev account, a test account, and a prod account.
Yeah, that's good practice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I've got
instead
all
of-
that going on. And
Yeah.
I think part of my problem is, you know, to your point about, you know, different, you know, you basically, it sounds, Michael, it sounds like you segregated your different environments into different folders so that you have like root modules kind of being just a call out to your main root module. And then you can kind of version your root module, right?
That's
I
correct.
definitely
Yeah.
have like, you know, I've been in Terraform for, and this is like, I feel bad that I have not figured this out, but you know, the whole Terra services, if anybody's watched that video about how to like structure Terraform root modules and all that stuff, I think that I would go that approach in the future, because I've definitely built something of a Terralith, like Terra monolith project that, you know, it's deployed to separate AWS accounts. It's but it's one code base that always is deployed to each account. And I think I would change that up maybe going into the future for at least this client, just because it's getting to a point where, you know, this Git flow thing is kind of helping solve some problems, but it's also kind of creating other problems. And it's a fun like catch-22. Where do I go from here? Or where do I direct them to go? Because it's getting a little crazy, but always fun to next challenge ahead.
Here's my answer then to this. Why I would be very cautious about using this So Git flow is one of the flows. There's GitHub flow and these. So in Git flow, develop branches convention, and here's the problem with using that as it relates to Terraform. It's similar to what I was talking about, like that Terraform is like running database transactions outside of database migrations outside of transactions. The problem with Terraform, if you're doing it this way and you're applying to develop, you can easily get yourself into this problem where you have a cycle, because you first created that S3 resource. Then you make some change that refers to the name, I don't know, the name of the S3 resource to create an object in the bucket of that name. This is not a good example. I'm struggling to come up with it, but I have definitely come up with cycles in Terraform where it works because you're layering your changes on top of it. And it works because you're first applying this, then you're applying this, then you're applying this. Okay, so now we take that branch and we merge it into master and we want to, or main, and we want to deploy it. Well, it's going to have an error because we had that cycle in there. And that didn't come up in the other testing processes because we didn't apply our migrations to each environment in the same order as we did. So, yeah, go on, Michael.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Eric. One example there that I can totally follow with you is a container that exists in an ECR repository that gets deployed as a part of the pipeline. So when you build that out, you're like, oh, cool, let me build my repository. Oh, let me build my pipeline, or let me build the ECS cluster. And then you deploy, you build your code, you deploy this container. Now that container lives in the repository. Now your Terraform is valid. It can find the container and the task definition that you created. It can deploy, the pipeline triggers and everything works. But then you go to your production environment and you deploy all of your Terraform, but that container is not there. Rather, that image is not there. It hasn't been pushed to the ECR yet. So then everything that relies on that container being there, the task definition, the pipeline, the code build, the ECS, it all just kind of dies, because it's waiting on that image to be there. So then you push the image and then you rerun everything and then it works. But that's an example of where that merge to master, deploy to master or whatever. Yeah, that first, maybe even second time, it's going to fail out of the gate.
That's a great, yeah. So that jogs my memory. That's a great example. So like if you depend on data sources
Yeah.
in your module, that's like the telltale sign you might be vulnerable for cycles depending on how you architected the stuff. And that could break your develop branch strategy.
Yeah,
Uh,
I want to add my experience. Actually, I agree with what Michael says, but I want to transform it into something else. First, format, what you can do is there is a use case for each client. I mean, sometimes you need to use branches, sometimes you need to use complete separated repositories, sometimes you need to use folders, but I try all of these approaches actually. All Each one of them has its own pro and cons, but the concept of stacks is working fine with me now. So I would deploy for an account a network stack, contains VPC, networking, VPN, etc. Then a data stack contains, S3, RDSs, etc. DynamoDB. Then the application stack contains the ECS, Kubernetes, ECR. This is a stack. Also, I have a CICD stack. So I control what I need to deploy and control the dependency between stacks so I can use data sources and remote state data sources to get value from each one to the other. Also, it will help you when you use Terraform Cloud, which is free and has a generous features. So the concept of stacks allow you to use Terraform Cloud easily, actually. So again, it depends on your use case, but I prefer not folders. Let's call it stacks approach. Yeah.
That's good advice, Mohammed. I just wanted to get to two people who've been raising their hand for a while here. Mike Dijon.
Hey,
Joaquin.
actually,
Was it related to this or a separate question?
it's a separate question.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. I'll come back to you. Joaquin, did you have something to add to this?
Yeah, no, I really like what Michael said regarding this. Like I say, the friction for developers to use it, the complexity, and then there's not necessarily merging back. That's one thing I think in the industry just often overlook is the people equation. It's kind of like, if you make something so complex, people aren't going to use it, and then what's the point of having that process in the first place? And so I've seen that in different types of Git flows or GitOps type, media that's coming popular today. I was using something like GitOps back in 2012 with Posse, and it was like so complex. There's all these complex ways to do code promotion so that you go from dev to stage to production, and then you have tags or all your different types of submodules and modules, and it was just like a maze, and developers were just blown away and they couldn't use it.
Yeah.
And so on one side it succeeds up to a point as long as the leaders are like running it and doing all the work, but then they become bottlenecks. But then everyone else, it kind of fails in that DevOps implementation. Like for DevOps, kind of one of the philosophies is that there's widespread adoption even for people that don't know the tech. They could use it, see a name and add some values and be good to go.
So let's say the takeaway from this is that it might work. It's not going to work out of the box. You can get it to work if you put in some policy controls and processes and define when it's not to do and avoid some of these cases that can cause it to fail. Yeah, I think that was pretty good. Matt, do you feel like you have a clearer understanding?
Yeah, I think that of course, I was probably looking for a more like, oh, you're just doing it wrong. The way to do it is this way. But yeah, it's opinion-based thing. It's a team-based thing. I kind of do that. I think it's there are pros and cons to each approach, and we'll see. I don't know. They'll check back in with me with 6 months, and I'll see if they're continuing to use it or not.
I think Git flow is one of the few things that people feel very strongly about one way or the other, along with, tabs versus spaces, or Eclipse versus IntelliJ, or,
Squash merging
Git flow
or
versus GitHub flow.
Yeah.
What is this clarifying is like which type of Git flow? I mean, there's the Git flow, but
Yeah, it doesn't really matter in this example. I mean, I think it's just the pattern of, develop and master branch or develop and main branch rather. That's the thought process. Andy, I'll just mention that it's funny you mentioned Eclipse versus IntelliJ. I don't think I've seen Eclipse in
Oh man,
8 years.
people will fight to the death over Eclipse versus IntelliJ. It's hilarious.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, if you're going to have that
No,
discussion, you have to throw Vim users in
Yeah.
there. They're the ones who are the most
Yes,
passionate.
yes.
Emacs all the way forever.
Yeah. So, Mike, I know you have a question. I did want to get to the ones that were first in my notes here. And if we have time, we'll get to yours. Mike, can you post your question in the Slack channel just to make sure we have it if we don't get to it?
Channel.
Oh, in the office hours channel. And that goes for everyone here. I know there's already a conversation going on here in the Zoom chat. I can't, for the life of me, remember to check that. Please post the questions and conversations in the office hours Slack channel, or cross post them. I don't mind if you cross post. That's cool too for this case. One of the questions Pierre Yves asked is, how do you organize your code for multi-region? Do you set the region at the provider level, or providing location at each element, or including region in the directory structure, etc.? I think there's a few common patterns for how this is done. Probably the most conventional patterns I've seen in the Terraform community. And just to be clear, actually, we don't practice it this way, but the most conventional patterns I see in the Terraform community would be to have regional folders in your repository, as well as then possibly defining one or more providers in the Terraform code. Now, if you're doing this in the folder approach, you're really saying that this folder only ever has one provider for one region, which is pretty nice. But there's some edge cases where maybe to do terraforming easily, like setting up VPN connections, you might want to have multiple providers set up. So having like up to 2 providers, I think, is not a anti-pattern. There is an extreme case that we recently ran into, Matt Calhoun can talk about, which is that let's say you want to deploy Security Hub and you're trying to meet CIS, and in order for that to pass, you actually have to deploy it in every freaking region, and only there's 16.
There's 16 that you can't disable.
And there's 16 core regions you can't disable. So that means that at minimum you have to deploy to 16 regions. So you have a couple choices here. You could have 16 providers for each one of those regions, but the thing is, you cannot not pass a provider when a module expects a provider for it. You can pass the same provider, but now you pass the same provider 16 times if you only want to be there. So here's the thing. I've kind of convinced ourselves, at least at Cloud Posse, we don't really want more than 2 providers per root module. And in our convention, which we haven't yet done a good job of documenting, we're currently working on it. If you go into like our Terraform, it's reference architectures. This is a work in progress and there is no documentation. This documentation is out of date here, but I bring it up because I want to show the stack configuration. So we don't follow the folder-based approach to organizing your infrastructure, because that imputes configuration in your file system, and we want to have all the configuration be in our configuration files. So we use this convention here. We are using an abbreviated form of the regions because resource names in AWS are limited in characters. And so here's like our US East 2 dev stack. So dev is the stage for us. And for us, our convention is to have one stage per account. So a dev account, a prod account. And then we might have multiple. So here's, in this case, here's US 2 infrastructure, and then here's US West 2 infrastructure, both for the prod account. And these are just the settings. So our modules we call our root modules components these days. We used to call them Terraform root modules. Now we are calling our components Terraform AWS components, as if we would have Terraform GKE components, etc. And then under there are the submodules for all of these things that we would deploy. So these get vendored into a customer site, but these modules, they just assume that when they're invoked in the region they should be invoked in. And
an example is the DNS. If you go to the DNS delegated,
all right.
in the main file, I think, in the main file. So here you have providers, yeah, one for the delegation and one for the root.
Yes, good point. So thank you for bringing that up, Mohammed. That really drives home the point here. I forgot about that. So we have this concept. A lot of this stuff just comes up with, what's our naming convention? How do we generalize the concept of what we're trying to do? And this is one of those concepts that we have. So the concept that we have is primary and delegated. And we use that for like DNS. We use that for VPN connections. We use that for IAM. And the idea is that when we have a primary and delegated, that's when we're using multiple providers, a primary provider and a delegated provider, where the delegated provider might be another region, it might be another account, so and so forth. Why I like this pattern is, and this is something that we optimize for at Cloud Posse, is that we are building building blocks. We are creating building blocks that need to be composable. We are trying to make our reference architecture and our architecture opinionated about the interfaces, but not opinionated about the architecture as such. So that if we said that this, like if we were deploying Security Hub and we decided we had to have 16 providers, well, what if we wanted to have, these other two regions that weren't there? Okay, we got to extend it. Now we have 18 providers. And I just want to avoid that situation where this customer has totally different requirement on regions and the number of regions from this other customer. And these are the design considerations that go into the way we architect our modules. Let's see here. On that question here for multi-region. So to your point then, yeah, we are not doing regions, but that is a very conventional way of doing it. We set the provider. You're only allowed, in Terraform 13 onwards, you're only allowed to set the provider in your root modules, not in submodules. So that also limits how you use regions. And providing location at each element. So this is the thing you can't do. Most Terraform resources, you cannot by convention set the region when provisioning that resource. The region is determined by the provider, and you have to provide the provider as a argument to calling the module.
The only consideration would be
Oh, hey Pepe, you're breaking up. Yeah, we can't really hear you. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay. Well, Pepe, please add your comments in the Slack, and we can read those out loud in a little while. Next question, as I get oriented here. I like this one. I'm sure as engineers, all of you have felt this at some point in your career or currently feel it at your company. Leah asks, I'm having trouble with the number of regular meetings at my companies. I kindly suggested to them to squeeze meetings into maybe 1 or 2 days so developers can have, some dedicated days to focusing on their job. I found a couple articles to support this case. One looks like here, from Harvard Business Review, and another one by Slack. I think the quintessential post on this that came out many years ago in 2007 or something was from Paul Graham of Y Combinator. And he talks about this whole concept of managers versus makers. And it is so real. I can relate to this entirely in my career progression. I started off as a very hands-on developer and have moved on, to running Cloud Posse, and my schedule has changed. At the same time, I'm sensitive to the developers on our team that they don't have all these interrupts of meetings. So the way we run meetings at Cloud Posse is pretty straightforward. We do our standard stand up every day at 10 a.m. That's pretty common. I think most developers will agree that that is a helpful thing to have to identify blockers early on. It should not just be regurgitating what's going on in Jira. It should be like what the actual state of affairs is. The next thing,
Eric, can I say something on that?
Yep.
I also do not think that those dailies are necessary, because there are some integrations in Slack that you can share your progress.
Yeah.
So I see some just standing up there. It's my progress, what I did yesterday, what I will do. There are tools in integrations in Slack, and
there are tools that do it asynchronously. And I was just approached by a developer on our team to consider one of those tools again. Matt Calhoun here suggested Stand-Uply. I will say that I have not evaluated it yet. That was just brought up to me yesterday. We'll look into that again. Matt, let's tune over to you for in a second about that.
Yeah.
I want to get my 2 cents in on that though. Here. I want to let's have you finish your point, Matt talk, and then as a manager, I want to give my 2 cents on how I feel about it. And there's some adversity around what we're optimizing for here. But go ahead, Leah.
That was it actually. I mean, we should establish some asynchronous communication in asynchronous meetings. Not because we can't take everybody at the same time, because the changing world from remote developers, different timelines, different. So we should find a solution for asynchronous communication. I'm now thinking about it.
In principle, I totally agree. This should be solved with asynchronous communication. This is a perfect opportunity to use things like Slack or bots to do it. With that said, I'm going to hold my. I'm going to pause on my thoughts on that for a second. Matt, I want you to give the argument or the case you gave to me and what like Stand-Uply does and what you liked about it, because I think other people that will resonate with other people on the call.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a developer, so first of all, we are a distributed team. So you said we do a stand-up every day at 10 a.m. Well, you do a stand-up every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time, but
yes,
I'm on the East Coast, so we do a stand-up at 1 p.m. Every day for me, which is sort of disruptive because it's not the beginning of my day when I'm giving.
I agree.
I'm in the middle of developing most days when that happens, etc. We have a couple of team members that are in Russia, that it's the very end of their day.
It's horrible for them. It's horrible.
It's horrible for them, all of that kind of thing. So as we become more distributed, I clearly think that a more asynchronous, communication would be at least you could get 80 or 90% of what we do in stand-ups probably done that way. And then if there are people that need like real-time discussion, we could break that off. But what did I do yesterday? What am I planning to do today? What am I blocked on communication? That's pretty the essential part of like stand-ups that lends itself very nicely to asynchronous communication, as well as in Stand-Uply in particular. I've used it before. I'd use any other tool, but that one I'm just saying has Jira integrations to prompt you so you can know what tickets you worked on yesterday in Jira. It has GitHub integrations to let you know all the commits you made and everything else, and it has a bunch of other data points out there. So for me personally, I just feel like it's a lot of disruptive time that could probably be used a little bit better, and I could read other people's stand-ups in a lot less than 30 minutes a day, or whatever.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So for all those reasons, I agree with it conceptually. As a manager, the counter argument, or what I've struggled with, is that it becomes as effective as two things. One is that Jira, your company probably has a Jira channel somewhere with a whole bunch of, notifications, automatic notifications, and nobody looks at it. Or we have like harvest notifications for automatic notifications there. And all these automatic systems, they produce a lot of noise And in principle, people could be reviewing them, but they're not. Everyone has so much on their plate. They're not concerned with what Matt's doing today because they have 10 other things on their plate they're trying to get to. And then, their wife interrupts them or whatnot, and it doesn't happen. The other thing is it's a stand-up is not just so much as what you're doing, it's what you're not doing. Or it's what we thought you should be doing, but shouldn't be doing anymore because we totally underestimated the scope and it's not worth it anymore. And I feel like it's really hard sometimes to enroll developers in understanding some of those implications, as well as maybe managers are, because they're feeling a whole different brunt of the problem. A good manager is sitting in between the developers and the rest of the company, fielding lots of questions. What's the status on this? What's going on there? How, when is this going to be finished? So that the rest of the developers aren't getting that. But they have to then be able to adjust and prioritize as things are happening throughout the week in real time.
Can I add one comment to that?
Yeah.
I think for us in particular, the difference from some of the other organizations I've worked in is that we actually pollute daily stand-up as also being sprint planning. So if we had a weekly or bi-weekly sprint plan where we actually said this is what you're going to work on this week, and everyone was just working on that, and we agree that you're not going to really change priorities, within the sprint unless an emergency comes up, then I think you would have a lot less of that fear of what you're talking about there. I could see a weekly sprint planning meeting where we say, okay, we spent too much time last week on this thing, or we want to change priorities, or we do that. And I think we're de facto conflating sprint planning and stand up together. And that's why you have that feeling that you have.
Fair enough. I'll take that.
I have one thing to add to that. For me, and especially with this current situation of work from home and you're just pretty much isolated, I think it also works as a team face-to-face as well. It does help with that social aspect of it, that we are not in the same space as well. So even right now with our teams, we do keep our stand-ups later on in the day because of time zones, but it does give us a moment just to spend a few moments just to decompress and just talk a little bit, whether it's on the project itself or just other things, or the parking lots that we may be dealing with.
I think that's a important aspect to it. Is the social aspect, is a reminder that we're all friends, we're all the same team, we're all you get to it's the only chance for water cooler conversation face to face on a regular basis in the modern remote.
Eric, may I add a point?
Okay, Leah, go ahead.
Another problem. So the dailies in my company was collecting all people from developers and DevOps all together, which who were not interested with their each other's. So when for example I try to tell something, they were interrupting and please do not express more because we are out of time because it's only 15 minutes. So it was converted into a stupid routine, which everybody says, okay, I'm in progress, blah, blah, blah. So it's not useful either. If I want to tell about something, I need some 5 minutes to tell about it. But developers, they're not interested because I'm DevOps engineer, but company has this DevOps and some misinterpretation that DevOps are everybody does everything, but it's not like that, right? DevOps is something else and developers something else. So this was another point. This was another problem I was facing.
I agree with the sentiment of that there's two things at stake. Everything is not relevant to everyone, and some teams can be too big. I think that we are out of time on this one, but I like this topic, and we should probably brainstorm some more collectively on how to improve this.
CTO thinks that DevOps means everybody does everything, but it's not like that. DevOps is something else, and developer is something else. Right? Do you agree on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
So I want to move. I want to try and move on too, but I just want to leave with one last thing. Why not both? My team actually does both, and we can talk about that more later.
Agreed.
I
I
wanted
think
to
it's a
ask
combination of both.
about the maker schedule link that you posted. I've read it and I've used it. When a manager puts a meeting on my schedule, my initial reaction is to decline it and say I'm on the maker schedule and give them a link to this exact article. And usually I get the response of, you inconsiderate little shit. You would I tell you, or whatever. How do you what do you do there?
but when I do it, I'm judged, and they are threatening to kick me from the company because they're blaming you if you do that. So even it's optional, you should. They're enforcing you to join that meeting. So that's I'm against. If it's optional, then I can decline it. But when I decline it, then they are judging you.
Yeah, corporate politics. I don't have an answer for that other than that's a cultural problem in the organization that is deeper one to solve.
Allow me to tell you a joke, actually. So all the OSI levels, right? It's from 7 to 1.
Yes.
So there is a new level, level 8, which is politics. So OSI with top of politics, yeah.
Yeah, politics is level 8.
Exactly.
Good one. All right.
Religion's 9, so you got the extra layers there.
In a meeting, in our weekly meetings on Wednesday, there's a kudos part, and in that kudos part, I remember I said kudos to Kamala Harrison because it was the day after they won the election, because blah blah blah, and they also silenced me. There's no politics here.
That's a sensitive one in general, right? Like politics and
I said it's not about politics, it's about human rights, it's about immigration rights, it's about women rights, and they said
I know. That's a can of worms. All I can say. So I appreciate it. Anyways, this was an amazing conversation today. I liked it. We did not get to finish all the items on the agenda today, but I do need to wrap things up. So I appreciate everyone's participation today. We're going to be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. Check that out later if you missed it or want to share it with other members of your team. Maybe the stand-up conversation here. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, head over there and click the subscribe link. That helps us out a fair bit. I appreciate it. If you haven't joined our Slack team yet, we have a very active community in the various channels like Terraform, Kubernetes, office hours. Please stop by and say hello, especially if you found us via office hours. And if you aren't able to subscribe to these regularly or join us for the live sessions, we do have a podcast where we syndicate all of these office hour segments too. So anyways, thank you everyone so much for your participation. Really love the discussion that we had here. If you haven't yet registered for these office hours sessions, you can go to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com office hours. We host these calls every Wednesday at 11:30 Pacific. Middle of the night for some of you. I'm sorry about that, but we appreciate you stopping by. Take care.